Are you currently outthinking, out-marketing, outselling, and out-strategizing those you compete with? It's no secret that when you can maximize your efforts in these areas, success is sure to follow. Let's have ourselves a pocket-sized pep talk because we've got one of the top executive coaches in here today, and I'm willing to bet you're about to get some of the greatest business and marketing tips you will ever receive. Buckle up.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
I don't use this word lightly when I tell you that today's guest, Jay Abram, is a business and marketing legend, working with people like Tony Robbins, Damon John, Stephen Covey, Brian Tracy, and a who's who in business that totals more than 10,000 clients. Hang on, I'm almost done fawning. Jay has been featured in USA Today, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, San Francisco Chronicle. I'm cutting some of these magazines out, folks. Entrepreneur Magazine, Huffington Post, Success Magazine, Inc., and many more. I am grateful you're still investing your time to bring value to shows like mine and entrepreneurs as well. And really glad to have you with us. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I get introduced on right before I get on stage and people go through my intro, I sort of sit there and go, yeah, that is me, isn't it?
Yeah, you go. It depends on the trajectory and the history of your life. But when you chronicle in that kind of a compressed manner, Rob, all the events that have occurred in a lifetime, and it goes so fast, you go, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. And it doesn't seem real because, a lot of these come and then you go on to something else and it just becomes hazy-fazy. But yeah, I've done a lot of things in my career.
Yeah, well, you sure have. What I wanted to start with you is this, because there's always a dance between sales and marketing. I was a former Xerox rep. It was sort of like sales and service. We needed to work together, but we didn't really work together. As a matter of fact, we kind of eyeballed each other like, what are you looking at? But I believe you talk about both. Tell me, in your view, kind of how you see sales and marketing weaving together as they should.
Yeah, well, I think that marketing, if in its purest sense, Rob, should be the driver and the lever that really does a couple things: finds, predisposes, even generates and readies the best qualified and the best desirable prospect for the salesperson to harvest. And I think it's supporting each other. If the salesperson has to do all the work, it's very hard. If the marketing does its job, it doesn't mean it's a shoe and it's not shooting fish in the barrel, but there's a lot of a difference. Like, we'll do advertising for my various services. And if somebody knows of me and they've seen or heard of me in a positive light, my salesperson has a much quicker, easier, higher incidence of closing. He has a much more positive interaction with the person. Whereas if they don't know anything about me and the proposition sounds audacious, they come in like that. So I think marketing is the lever that sets up the prospect for the salesperson to harvest.
Right. Yeah. Well said. When I get pushed into a corner, I sometimes say, I hope you don't mind, because this is a real crude version, but sometimes I just look at the client, I go, marketing is what gets somebody to get to this table, and sales is what happens once we pull out the chair. Yeah. And so, but they have to work in tandem. And, for me, at least, when I'm working with sales training company, I'm always encouraging them, bring the marketing folks in here. Let them spend some time looking at the way.
They don't always know. They don't understand the issues that happen once, the rubber meets the road and the salesperson has to interact. And I think that a lot of marketing people, frankly, Rob, they operate in a theoretical, sort of an elevated stature where they don't have any context, any empathic understanding of what it's like to be responsible for really closing the generation of the revenue that drives the whole business.
Yeah. And frequently they're the ones creating those marketing materials, those training materials. And just from my perspective, it's a frequently showing some beautiful solution that very few people are identifying with, where the sales force is trying to back that customer up and look at the problem they're trying to solve.
Absolutely agree. No, I think you're absolutely on point. I think that I've always felt, frankly, that the world doesn't value the sales at the level they should. I mean, salespeople get paid well, but it's funny. Even and you sell sales training and sales. I've helped many of the top sales trainers over my career, long career, and I always felt that the value of their knowledge wasn't revered. Very rare that a salesperson, a sales trainer, can charge what the value of that training is really worth. And I find it really interesting that oftentimes management won't even pay a lot for it or anything. And the onus falls on the salesman or woman himself. I've always thought there was an inequity there that made no sense.
Right. No, I've been pushed back a few times. And when I've been in ornery moods, I've even said, I'll tell you what, I'll just take a piece of the percentage of increase that we produce. So I'll just bet on me here. If we don't increase anything, we don't have to pay me. And you know what? Nobody's ever taken me up on that deal.
Yeah, well, our model is we get a fee against profit sharing, because I don't even want to be paid for advice anymore. It's either they're either paying too much or too little. If the advice works and they work it, it's going to be far more valuable than I could ever charge. If it doesn't work, then it's worthless. So either way, it's a waste. It's either you're charging too little or too much.
Yeah, I hear you. How about, let's just stay in sales for a second longer. Give me, in your opinion, what you think. We've got a bunch of salespeople listening right now.
All right.
So let's just condense it. Give me one or two. If you could just pull them aside and say, look, just two things I want you to do differently when you pick up the phone or when you walk in that door, what would they be?
Well, I mean, because my work I'm going to answer you, but I'm going to give a context and a little bit of a basis. So my work integrates lots of things, not just marketing, sales, business model, strategy, etc. I'm a very big believer. I was trained in variability. You do something, say something, express something one way, it produces X. You do it another, it produces 2X. You do it another, it produces 3X. You do another, it produces 1/2 X. And I don't think most people selling and the management that teaches them really do enough experimenting in testing variability. We one time, as an example, I had a large client that was a very big furniture chain, and we tested 33 different ways of greeting people at the front door and found one that tripled conversion. Tripled. Wow. I have tested different ways of starting, whether it's an ad, a sales approach, a phone call. There's a lot of research, Rob. The headline is sometimes as much as 80% of the effect of what you do. And a headline has many different denominators. In an ad, it's certainly the big cluster of words at the top. But it can also be the first paragraph that is uttered when somebody calls you, you visit at the front door. I mean, and I've seen the variability. It's tremendous. If you again, I'm not trying to countermand the sales managers, but if you base your initial commentary on a value-based benefit advantage proposition that you're going to be able to either solve or at least show how to achieve that, it normally, not always, will outperform some silly, vacuous thing. But there's all kinds of elements direct response marketing and selling is really the same thing, except for one is dealing one-on-one and the other is one-to-many. So if you try to run an ad, if you think about it, an ad, whether it's video, audio, written, email, it's being received one person at a time, by one person at a time. Even if you're going to reach 1 million people with it, So it's really the same thing. It's just salesmanship multiplied. But, I've seen that the positioning, the first thing is very critical. How you carry forward that, then how you establish or prove your proposition, how you credentialize it, how you show people not just the linear product service, but you take them into the future, a form of future pacing to show them what life or business or health or whatever is going to be like when they have your product or service deployed in their life, and what's happening. And then you denominate it as many ways as you can. I've seen risk reversal, different ways of making it easier to say yes than no. I mean, each of these have on their own multiplying effects. I've seen bonus incentive, whether it is related or totally unrelated, increase 40-50%. All of those things can be tested, and I don't think most people selling test anything.
Yeah. I came from my background, just so you know, from a sales perspective, was right out of the University of Maryland into New York Life, sold life, health, and disability. And really got it was kind of a Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross kind of effect. But boy, did I learn. Yeah. Boy, did I learn how to sell. Yeah. Then I moved to Xerox, which is all process oriented. I'm talking about the 80s now, when Xerox was really known for their sales training.
They had a division that sold it.
Yeah. I was actually at that. I was in Leesburg, where we had when it was 2,400 square acre place. We slept 1,100 people in that facility. Wow. But very process oriented, lots of repeatable, predictable processes. And that's what's always been fascinating to me about marketing gurus, because in sales, we really can take a process and say, okay, I'm going to work with this software company today. I'm going to go work with Bank of America tomorrow, and I'm going to go work with a laboratory the day after that. And although we have to adjust, trust is trust, urgency is urgency. We can use a lot of what we do. Marketing, not so. Or is it? You have to shape the shot a little bit.
There are a lot. I mean, you have to conform them to the media and the market, but there's a lot of very process-oriented, systematic things you can do. It's, formulaic is a little less adaptable to marketing, because you've got to give your product or service, personality, dimension. You have to almost animate it so that it comes alive in the eyes and the mind of the target audience, and it's differentiated. But there are a lot of them. But a lot of marketing people think that creativity is marketing. Creativity can be an enhancer to marketing, but marketing really is figuring out, how are you going to convey to your, first, how are you going to find the most desirable target audience? How are you going to cost effectively reach them? How are you going to communicate to them the biggest, either single or on a descending order hierarchy of attributes, benefits, advantages that product or service can provide them? How are you going to prove to them your claim? How are you going to incentivize them to want to know more and do it in a timely way and a prioritized way? And how are you going to then be able to have your salespeople congruently fulfill on what you set them up to expect? I got started selling. So the good news is, if you've sold on the front lines of capitalism, you have more empathic understanding of that integration. Whereas if you just got hired out of, and not knocking university, but with a marketing degree, and you get thrown in the marketing department, and they never send you out on the streets or sitting on the phone or calling on distributors or being in the grungy, or standing watching people, buy things in a retail store or any of those things. You have no context of what reality is.
No, you're right. There are some, certainly true for sales. This business school, there really isn't a selling major that you can find. University of Houston, a couple of the schools are starting. LSU, a few of the schools are out there doing it, but particularly in sales, you've got, to me, you got to learn how to take a hit. You got to have, you have to learn how to take a punch. I don't know. I've been asked that question a lot. What are we looking for in sales? And to me, it's like, I can teach somebody features and benefits. I prefer not to, but they're going to have to learn them. I want to teach them how to problem solve, how to communicate, how to ask questions and listen. But I'm looking to see if they can take a punch.
Yeah, I mean, resiliency, tenacity, and passion, purpose. And I mean, people don't understand that rejection is that would be like, that's a job description, unless you're selling cancer cures, to people with stage 4 cancer. Selling is overcoming apprehension, rejection, uncertainty. If you don't understand the dynamics that you have to embrace, and you don't take it personally. I mean, if you get defeated when somebody says no, or you get, I always remember the hilarious quote: if you have 99 ways to say no, and I have 100 ways to get you to say yes, if we stay in dialogue long enough, I'll win.
I've never heard that quote, and I've heard most of them. You have to be able to take a loss. You have to be able to handle that. And that's everybody who's looking to hire salespeople is always looking for the latest, greatest approach to figuring out whether they've got the right person. I don't really care if you've ever sold a product in my industry. I'm looking for an athlete, and I'm looking for somebody who can take a punch. That's me.
That's really good. I like that. I was friendly for many years, and probably still am, but I don't talk to the famed quarterback, Fran Tarkenton.
Oh, one of the first books I ever read, Better Scramble Than Lose. Yeah, I know.
A great guy, and good entrepreneur. But and he started outselling, and they do that in the season between the footballs. Only made about $50,000 when he was a year. Wow. When he was doing it, and he was in 3 Super Bowls, and they lost all 3. Yeah, it's just a part. It's a part of the process. But I mean, there are ways to mitigate. I always say you want absolute advantage in anything you do. And that gives you the edge, but it's not certainty.
Right.
Advantage is not absolute certainty you're going to win, but it gives you a weighted advantage. And if you can have advantage, then you start off with a better place. But I think that selling and marketing is very critical to support selling. If a salesman or woman doesn't have great marketing, you've burdened them with so much more effort and slipping of lost torque than is deserve it. I mean, if you're a company owner and you're going to spend money on marketing, understand what its role is. Don't penalize the salespeople because you don't really understand marketing's role, because you put a lot of onus on them. And if their job is they're the last mile.
Right. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Again, everyone sort of loves, well, you're in sales and marketing. You can handle the apples and oranges. It's two different skill sets. And so I appreciate you saying that. All right. I only have so much time with you. So I want to swing you to two more questions and I'll let you go.
Yeah, okay.
But one of them, but I'm going to do a 180. I'm going to talk to you as a speaker now, as a presenter. Right. And because you've had a lot of time with that mic around your neck too. So when you're maybe a tip or two that you could offer this audience when you're up there and you step on that stage and your name is called, you know what you're going to talk about, but you're walking into the unknown. Just thought a little part, a piece of your thought process as you're walking up there.
Yeah, I have never, ever been intimidated to speak to a group. And I don't do a lot now, but I've spoken to, 10,000 people before, and we've charged an enormous amount of money to speak to groups. I always felt like my job, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about me, how I looked. I mean, and I didn't even worry about how magnificent my message was. I worried more about my purpose on being on that stage. I always saw my purpose to transfer understanding with each individual in the room. And I realize that no two people in a room are the same. Their hopes, their dreams are not the same. Their experiences are not the same. And thus, their definition of certain words aren't the same. So I went out of my way to make sure I tried to help everybody understand exactly what I was saying. I never looked at a group as a group. I always wanted everyone to feel like I was talking just to them with total truth. And this is not bullshit. I've never been anything but authentic in what I do. I've known and I've trained and I've advised lots of speakers, and very truthfully, they almost have contemptuous disdain for their audience. It's all facade. They don't really appreciate. They might have started that way, but they go beyond that. Now, there's some wonderful people. Tony Robbins really is connected to his audience. He's very deeply involved. He's a great listener. He's very interactive. When I speak, what I try to do the most now is not do canned stuff. I try to say, okay, get me a chair, get me questions, problems, challenges, untapped opportunities, and let me go deep with people, and let me, as I'm explaining it, then do little out of body distillations where I explain what's driving that, the process, the principle, the law, the methodology, excuse me. But I always had, it was never my primary driver. In other words, if I never go on a stage again, it's not going to change my life. I've been privileged. I've done it 80 times around the world. So I've had a great professional life, and I'm grateful. But I always went on stage, not caring about me at all, but caring about them. And I would think, okay, these are, and I'd look at somebody at different stages of their life or their career or anything, and I'd think, okay, I'm going to deal with them as if they're innocent, young children, formulative, open-minded, receptive, and I'm going to treat them with a total respect, no matter who's in the audience. And I'm going to do everything in my power to take what's here, torque convert it, get it out here, and deeply entrench it. I never was as interested in motivation or just trying to rah-rah them temporarily. I was more interested in crock cooking their awareness, because I wanted the greatest acknowledgement I ever got out of an audience wasn't clap, clap, or a standing ovation. It's for them to go out and do shit.
Yeah.
Excuse my vulgarity, but just to do shit. If that was my intention. But I also learned, and I got this from Fran. He had a great quote that I have lived by ever since he shared it. And it's pretty cool. He said, your goal in life is any time, Rob, you interact, any reason for any amount of time, long or short, your job is to make them better off because you were in their life. And that's a very macro statement and has a lot of interpretive possibility. But if that drives you, it's not about you. You don't care. I mean, so I never, I don't care. I mean, Desiree said, "Oh, what are you going to talk to him about?" I said, "Whatever his audience needs. It doesn't matter." And if you have that kind of and I'm a little bit blessed because I've worked in 1,000 industries in very complex and diverse scenarios. So I have a knowledge base, frankly, to draw from that I can't talk about operations because I don't understand that. I'm ADD, so I have a couple of flaws there, but I can talk about anything you want to talk about empirically, reality-based, because I've been involved in it. And I can have great empathic respect for whatever the topic is and how it affects, benefits, impacts an audience. I don't know that everybody else can, but I think what I'm saying is it's a good target to shoot for.
Yeah. Listen, you basically just given everybody an education on authenticity. And to me, when you sit in that chair and you say, "Bring it on," that's authentic. I know for me, I don't quite run them that way, but I always run exercises where I'm going to track a decision somebody's making and I'm going to relate it here. And we're going to have this conversation. And that's the most beautiful part for the audience and me, because clearly I wasn't doing this on the plane while I was coming here. This is happening here and now. This is real.
Yeah.
And so I live for opportunities like that. You've just taken that on steroids and you've said, I'm going to sit in a chair. We're going to go beginning to end that way. Yeah.
I've had a lot of time to think about a lot of issues, and I'm older than most people were probably talking about. So I have a context of not just experiential, but I also have a sort of a sense of sort of the meaning of life, and and what rocks your boat. And real joy is external. It's not really internal. When you've achieved a modicum of success and you get the stuff you think is going to be the denominator that transforms everything, it doesn't. The sky doesn't open, the angels don't trumpet, it's the nirvana doesn't prevail, all your problems don't disappear. So when you realize that life is about the process, this discussion is as good as it gets, then it makes it much, and you have a chance to impact somebody or many somebodies, and they have a chance to impact many somebodies. And it presupposes there's something that, this is a little tricky when I say this, and please have everybody think about this. If you sell, market, produce, deploy, disseminate a product or service that makes a meaningful difference in somebody's life or business, then you have a moral responsibility to figure out how to get as many people aware of it and using it. And if you don't, you should find something that does.
Right. Well, and you've articulated that a couple of times that, and I think it's really moving that really for presenters like you and me, I'm with you. I know I've got clients that be able to ask for a motivational speaker. And sometimes when I'm not in a good mood, I'll give them a couple numbers. If I couldn't motivate, inspire, and entertain, I wouldn't be in the business. I want to see what you're doing 6 months from now. I want to be the guy who sits back with a smile, cup of coffee in my hand and go, I had a piece of that.
Yeah,
that's what we live for.
I think that
yeah.
people who really care about what they do, but not just what they do, but who they do it for. Somebody said something, I'm very lucky. I've had lots of great mentors. And one of them said to me, Jay, you should always know sort of, what do you stand for? Who do you stand for? Why do you stand for it? What does standing for it mean? How is it expressed? And how do you know it's validated back by whomever it's focused towards? But it's a driver of me, because I always question, am I congruent with what I stand for? And if the answer is yes, then I'm happy. However things play out. If the answer is no, I'm unhappy, even if they play out well, because I've compromised the integrity of who I am. And I think you always have to be in integrity, and you have to know what it is. If you don't know, there's a great quote from Shakespeare. I can't remember, Rob, if it's Polonius or if it's Macbeth or whoever it was, Romeo and Juliet, but it's to thine own self be true. But you can't be true to yourself if you don't know who you are, what you are, why you are. And I don't think most people do.
Right. I agree with you. All right. I've got one last question for you. I'll let you go. When I was looking over your website and learning about you and looking at some of the names, they're impressive. I'm done fawning. Don't worry. But I have a lot of people listening that suffer from imposter syndrome. So I really think I'd love to hear your view on this. When you're talking to a Tony Robbins, and maybe not today, but let's go back into the Wayback Machine. When you were first meeting some of these people and you were elevating through your career, how did you get past the feeling of, who am I to be talking to Brian Tracy? I just know a lot of people that I work with, they suffer from that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just speaking for myself. It wasn't about me or they. It was about, if I had knowledge that they didn't, my goal always was to contribute that. And even Tony, when I first met Tony, I just was trying to help him with his business. And when I first met Brian, I was just trying to help him with his business. And Damon John, first time he called me, I had no idea who he was. They were doing Shark Tank. It was the first year. It was not doing well. They thought it was going to be canceled. and he called me about a totally different question that somebody told him I might be able to help answer. And I looked at him as just somebody in need of clarity, guidance, and understanding. And it turned out to be a really nice relationship, 12, 15 years later. But yeah, I like, I get a kick out of quality, successful people. I get appalled by arrogant, condescending, disrespectful, and sort of people that believe that they are so much superior. I've been taught that every human being has value, relevancy, significance, and deserves to be acknowledged as such. There's obviously there's shits in the world, rapscallions, it's people who take advantage, but the vast majority of people at all spectrum deserve to be acknowledged and need to be. And if you can acknowledge people sincerely, and one of the greatest things you can do is smile authentically or listen or show them you heard what they said. And most people, and this is very, very true of salespeople, and I think it's a very big potential flaw, they don't know how to listen. They're so busy trying to cue up their rhetoric when there's a break to come back and commandeer dominance in the conversation that they don't really hear the conversation, nor do they acknowledge to the other person they have heard them. And I think learning how to be in the moment and really be part of the discussion and listen and hear and process what's really going on and project what's happening in the mind and the life of that person behind just that superficial moment is pretty powerful. It's a pretty powerful gift if you can cultivate it.
Yeah. Well, you hit on it. The biggest problem that salespeople have is, of course, they don't listen and ask questions. And when they do, and we teach them how to do it, they're obsessed on the next question they're going to ask. So it becomes almost a catch-22 a little bit. But we're working on a funny story. I'll let you go. I put together a program once where I was going to teach improv skills to salespeople. And I thought this would be really good. Get them to think on their feet. That's what they're needing. Yeah. Couldn't sell a seat. Changed the name to an exercise in mental agility, trademarked the word mental agility. Boom. They were coming out of the rafters. So a great lesson in marketing on that one.
It's a true story. And you might know this. The fabulously successful book, Think and Grow Rich, first came out with a title called How to Use Your Noodle to Make a Boodle when it didn't sell anything. They changed the name, and all of a sudden Think and Grow Rich is, 500 million copies sold over 100 years or something.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It is.
Whew. All right. How do people get a hold of you?
If they're interested, I'm very accessible. Probably the easiest way. We have a website. We give all kinds of things away. It's abraham.com. But, if they're significant and they want to talk about something, they just go to my assistant. Its surname is Desiree, DESIREE @abraham.com. And just so I preempt, we do a lot of work with people, but we're not inexpensive. So I don't want people to have sticker shock. That's why we give lots of stuff away and, without any stipulation or catches, because I'm a pretty big contributor and benefactor to entrepreneurs, significant companies that have some resources we love to work with. But if you don't, it doesn't mean we don't have empathy and respect and a desire to contribute. We give lots of great stuff away gratis.
Got it. Well, I want to tell you, I learned a lot today. And one of the themes that you hit on, and I'm just going to play it back to tell you I was listening, is that you wove this together a couple of times. So it's clearly ingrained in you that when you're on stage, you're focused on that audience. When you're with an individual, you're focused on that individual. And just to take that focus off yourself, which, by the way, for speakers, you want to feel less anxious, stop focusing on yourself and focus on the audience, like Jay's telling you to do. But the fact that that's where you put your focus clearly tells us why You are who you are. And Jay, I am so grateful we had an opportunity to meet.
Very nice. And I hope in parting that that it had some impact. I mean, one of the things that I think is very important for people is to slow down and think about things deeper, because everyone's in such a hurry that when I have interaction, I'll think about the questions you ask. I'll think about the answers I responded to. I'll think about the audience you represent, and I'll think and question, did I add value to this? Could I have done better? What could I have done better? What did you share to me that I never thought about that I want to appropriate? What did I try to share with you that I think maybe was one of the better articulations? But we don't think about anything. We go from one thing to another thing to another thing. And If you ask anybody what happened today, most of them couldn't even answer you.
Yeah, you're right. But you also said something, you're an unconscious competent. I just want to make people conscious. The way you just explained that was very balanced. Instinctively, most people say, what did I do today? Oh, I didn't do this. I didn't finish that question. Oh, what couple things I do differently and a couple things I did pretty well. I want to make sure I keep doing those things. We got to be kinder to ourselves. Keep that all in balance. And that's what you do very naturally because you just articulated it. I just wanted to make sure people grabbed that and understood that was a fair and balanced feedback that Jay goes through. And I think that contributes to your success. I really do. In any case, I really appreciate you being on the show. And thank you so much. I'm grateful.
Value to everybody. And you're a very interesting man. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everyone. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.